So far, we've been writing Java class as a program, and we put the main method in it and we run it. This chapter will talk about class as a template for new type of objects. We're using a class to describe, to digitize real world things. For example, we can write here, we can write a class called motor to represent a motor. So how we do that? And we can do public class and give a name called motor. And we have two parts of it. One is what we call the attributes part of it. It's the data that describe the object. So the most important thing we describe a motor is a power. So we gave the type double and we give a variable name called power. And in general, we will put this as private. And we'll talk about why we're using that. And this is actually the very important concept about encapsulation. Okay, every data, we the data to be private. Okay, we'll talk about what that means. And then we will have methods. And the method here is not really a method for main, but we'll have a method here that describe the behavior of the motor. The first one we doing is to talk about how we can initialize, how can we create an object of motor. And so the constructor here is public, and the name of the method is the same as the class name here. And we don't have the parameter for the method. And also important thing here is that we don't have a return type. Okay, so we can print, say this is a motor constructor, or we can create an object with, let's just say, with the initial power set to be 0. And also the object here have what we call the setters. And so that's the method we want to set the value of the power. Okay, so we'll say void set power, and we'll give the parameter, say what power, what value we want to set the power to be. So we'll give some value here, and we can set the power is equal to that value. Another method here is, because this power is private, and in order for another program to know, to be able to use the value of power, and we can set the public method to return to it. So it's a public double get power, and here we simply just return power. Okay, so this is normally we call getters method. We have a constructor, we have setter, we have just one setter, and then we have a getter. And the last thing is quite important, is we want to print out the value or the information about the object. So the toString method will return a string that represents the information about the object. And so one thing is we will return a string. So we'll say string out. Initially, it's empty. So we can design whatever the string that can be returned. And we're using string concatenation. So string plus equal, let's just say power equal, and we'll just present the power of the object. Or we can say motor power to the power, okay? And then we'll return the string. So you can see here for the motor class, we don't have any main. We have a class that have a data to describe the attributes of the motor. And then we have public classes that has kind of a behavior of the motor. You know, we can set the power to the motor and we can get the information about, you know, how the current power is, and we can present the information. So right now it's kind of like all those basic behaviors, and as typically every class we have is we can have a constructor, we have a setter, we have a getter, we have a toString method. And now how we're going to use this one is in another class. It's called drive.java here, okay, in another class here, and we can create a main method. And we can use it, for example, now because we have a motor class, and we can have motor class, and then we can create a motor called M1 equal new motor parentheses. So this statement is actually calling a constructor. Calls the constructor to create the object called the M1. Now, if we want to see the information about M1, and we can simply just print M1 here. So this pattern, it looks familiar. It's kind of like a motor, kind of like the type, and M1 like variable, but this is not a typical variable. It's actually an object, and we can print this object information by simply just put them into the print line parentheses, and then we can print the information out. And they should print out the information says motor power equals 0. So if we run here, come on. Takes a while. Let's close this out and we'll try to rerun here. So let's try to run this one. Come on. It seems like it takes a while, for the server to respond. That's interesting. but here is the structures about how to use the create a template for a class, create class as a template, and then another class, and we are create objects of the class.